Hi, it's me, Vicki Marie. And if you're a returning viewer to my channel, thank you so much for coming back. If it's the first time you've ever viewed me and my channel, my name's Vicki. I like to talk about true crime in hopefully a calm and reasoned manner. No, there'll be no gore, no gory details, etc. in my channel. I just like to talk about the psychological aspect of it. It's purely for information and entertainment purposes. And please understand that as you watch the video. I hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, perhaps you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up and press the like button and hopefully subscribe to see further videos. One little comment I just want to make before I start. This video is not about Nicola Bulley, but would you like me to I have done a video about the Nicola Bulley case, which of course I think is still ongoing. There's so much mystery now shrouded in it and lots of things bubbling under the surface. And I'd really like to do some analysis of, the comments of the people involved in the case. Would you like to see that or not? Let me know anyway in comments. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Today, buckle up, because this is a hell of a case, a hell of a story. This is one of those cases that if it was on a film or in a book, you'd say, oh, that's too far-fetched, that could never happen. It would be totally, it's like escapism, except unfortunately, it is true. And I'm going to talk about Alex Murdaugh, not quite sure how it's supposed to be pronounced over there in America. I think it might be Murdoch, we might say. Anyway, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong to any of you who've got that same surname. But gosh, especially if you are in America, I'd be very surprised if you haven't heard about this case. Maybe over in Britain, Europe, etc. Maybe not so much, though it did hit the headline news here as well. But it's not been talked about so much, obviously, because it's not, it's an American story, really. But, I mean, it's such an incredible story that, I think it would really gather attention all over the world. So, as you know, I like to put a sort of a different slant on things. I will be discussing sort of the timeline, if you like, the events. But it's more I like to think about motives for doing things, why someone would do the things that are done. The mysteries that still remain, and there's still a lot to come out in this case. Anyway, let me get on with it, and then you can make your own mind up. That's the other thing. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to tell you what happened, or my understanding of what happened, what I think about it perhaps, and then ask you, what do you think? Because I love to get different ideas. People put a different slant on things. There's something I've missed or something I hadn't thought of or it hadn't occurred to me. So I always like to get, as many opinions as possible. So please leave comments, respectful comments always, but please leave comments. And I do read them all, and I do find them all useful, even the ones I don't agree with. Okay, so we're in America. We're in South Carolina. And where this started, it's difficult to find a place where this particular story started. But I suppose what brought it out into the open, let's say, the story had already started from where at this starting point that I'm going to tell you, but it wasn't sort of an international mystery then. It was just, there had been sort of hometown rumours, if you like, things going on, but where the actual story that's grabbed the world's attention started, I think, was probably on June the 7th, 2021. And this is when a 911 call came in saying that 2 people were dead at a residence in Islington, South Carolina. So there were two victims, and these victims were Margaret, or Maggie Murdaugh, who's 52 years old, and her son Paul, who was only 22 years old. So, as I say, this is where the international attention started, but the full story started long before. So let's just talk about the Murdaugh family for a little while. They're one of those families, American families, there are British families the same. They've sort of, they're like an institution, you know. They've been practicing law in South Carolina since 1910. 3 generations of this family have served as solicitors of the 14th Judicial Circuit for more than 86 years. Now, all male, I hasten to add. Seems that I don't know, the women in this story are not, well, there aren't, anyway, let's get on with it before there's no point in me talking about it until I tell you the story. This family reminds me so much of people of my age, or even a little bit younger, will remember Dallas, the TV series from the 80s and 90s. And this family reminds me of that. You've got like this JR character, you know, and the sons and the good old boys sort of mentality, and everybody, you know, all these things simmering under the surface. And, you know, the law can't touch them or doesn't want to touch them, etc. So, yeah, it reminds me very much of Dallas, which, you know, this is what I've said about it. It's like a story that's too, you know, we all love Dallas because of the escapism of it, but this seems like this is like the true life Dallas. So, it was Maggie's husband, the lady who was found dead. It was her husband, Alex, and he is Paul's father. And it was him who phoned the police that day to say that he had just stumbled on his wife and son shot to death in their hunting, in the grounds of they have a special hunt, you know, they have lots of different residences. And Paul and Maggie were found in the grounds of the hunting lodge near the dog kennels, which actually comes to be quite significant later on. He has another son, Richard, who's also known as Buster, and you know, he's not technically a part of this story, but is he though? You know, you'll see as we go on. I won't be surprised if he is involved in some way, but anyway. So, what had happened was that in April that same year, Paul, the son who'd been shot, had in fact been arrested and later indicted on charges of boating under the influence, BUI. So instead of drinking and, well, it was drinking and driving, but he was driving a boat as opposed to a car. So this had happened earlier that same year, and it's very significant as well to this case. So this is what I mean about this story going back. That's one thing. There's others, but that's one thing that happened before this event. So he was charged with causing death and 2 counts of causing, 1 count of causing death and 2 counts of causing significant bodily injury. And this case was coming up for trial, if you like. It hadn't been, a date hadn't been set yet. So allegedly, because this case never came to trial, of course, because Paul died or was murdered, a highly intoxicated Paul got behind the wheel, insisted on getting behind the wheel despite the other people in the party asking him not to, and started driving recklessly. He had 5 passengers, 5 other young people, friends, and he crashed into a bridge. Mallory Beach, one of the girls who was only, I think, 19 years old, yeah, she was thrown from the boat and her body was found a week later. Now, Paul pleaded not guilty, of course, and he was released on a $50,000 bond, and the trial date was pending, as I say. Now, apparently Alex, his father, turned up at the scene. You know, there is some video footage that you can look at online of him talking to the police officers, etc. And there's also something that I thought was interesting, that I think it was Mallory's boyfriend who said to the police at the time, "Do you know who he is?" And he said, "Good luck," to the police when they said that they'd find out what happened. So this is a family that are well known for getting away with things, let's say. They were powerful. You know, they had lots of contacts. They could get away with things that normal people like you or I wouldn't be able to get away with. Okay, oh, and then later, Alex's brothers, who would be Paul's uncles, appeared on Good Morning America and seemed to insinuate that they thought Paul's death was a result of Mallory's death, that he had had received death threats online, and they sort of insinuated that Alex had nothing to do with the murder of Paul and his wife, but more it was to do with some sort of revenge from the incident that resulted in Mallory's death. Anyway, this was sort of proved wrong, but anyway, let's go on with this. Now, I just want to say a few words about Maggie, because I really feel for Maggie. You know, I just get this feeling, to all intents and purposes, she was a very good mother. She came from a life, you know, the life she came from really, as a woman, and certainly the age she was when she was younger, probably the best thing you could hope for was making a good marriage. She probably thought she had made a fantastic marriage with Alex Murdaugh, you know, going into that family, etc. And probably for quite a long time, it was, you know, their money was abundant, she had the children, etc. But of course she had two boys. There were no other girls in that family, and probably, you know, boys with the best will in the world, they can be difficult. Well, girls can be difficult, I suppose, I shouldn't say that, but seems like she was an excellent mother. She devoted her life to her boys and her husband, despite the fact that it's rumoured that in the last, you know, maybe quite a few years before the incident, Alex had been having an affair, which I'm not going to really go into that because I don't think it's important to the outcome of everything, but it probably was. But I think her life was probably easy in the material sense, but maybe not easy in an emotional sense, let's say. I think as her boys grew up, I expect it was hard to keep control of them because they were so entitled, you know, so spoilt. They probably got everything they wanted. Maybe that was partly her fault. I don't know, because I don't know the ins and outs of the whole personal relationship, but I should imagine it was very difficult to keep spoilt rich boys in check. And I expect once they got to adolescence, there was a lot of covering up, a lot of excusing behaviour, etc. We know of some of it that we're going to be talking about in this video, but there was probably lots more. So they got away with murder, literally got away with murder, and they probably did not consider the consequences of their actions. I think that was apparent. You know, obviously Paul's been murdered, and you know, they say you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but I think generally from what I've investigated, he doesn't seem like he was a very nice person. I'm not saying he deserved to die, because obviously he didn't, but he didn't really consider feelings of other people very much. Having said that, in the interest of balance, other people say he was a very kind person. So, you know, like everything else, we just have to read the information we can and make our own minds up. Or sit on the fence, of course. Then there was another incident. So now we're looking at two deaths. There's Paul and Maggie have been shot dead. There's Paul Mallory, who was killed in the boating accident that was caused by Paul, one of the people who've been shot dead. And then there was another incident. There was the housekeeper of the Murdaughs, Gloria Satterfield, who was 57 years old. And in 2000, now she was their housekeeper for years, and apparently she treated the Murdaugh boys as if they were her own boys. They loved her, she loved them, it was all like a lovely relationship. However, in 2018, she died in what was reported at the Murdaughs' home. She died, and the Murdaughs reported it as, what did they say, a trip and fall on the front steps of their home. Whatever. Now, was it though? I mean, it just all seems a little bit suspicious to me. Poor Gloria. Anyway, Alex Murdaugh, he actually advised her two sons to file a wrongful death suit against him. His home insurance would pay out, he said, and it did. $4.3 million his insurance paid out, 2 insurance policies paid out. He kept it. He kept all the money, and Gloria's sons, Tony and Brian, did not receive a dime of it. So that was nice of him, wasn't it? Yeah, he advised them to take out a private lawsuit against him, and then he kept the money. Okay. Now there are plans to exhume the body. So at the time it was just accepted it was an accident, but of course in the view of everything that's happened since, they are planning on exhuming Gloria's body. Now whether it will come, I'm quite surprised really, because she was 57, she was young, so she tripped and fell and died, and that was it. There was no autopsy, no questions asked, but maybe that's the power of the Murdaughs at the time. Now, and I just want to mention that also, going back to Mallory, Mallory's family were also phoned by Alex, who said, he could offer them. Oh no, sorry, no, this is the next one. Because you lose track. There's that many deaths in this story. So there are plans to exhume Gloria's body. There's another exhumation planned of another body that we haven't mentioned yet. And in 2015, so before Gloria's death, Buster Murdaugh, who's the other brother, the surviving brother, who's not dead yet, his school classmate was found dead in suspicious circumstances, not far from that same hunting lodge where Maggie and Paul were shot dead that day. This poor boy's name was Stephen Smith, and his death was first declared as shot in the head, then declared as beat up, then finally as a hit and run, according to his mother. This is Stephen Smith. So, she set up a GoFundMe page. She's always felt that there were suspicious circumstances. So she felt like the police weren't interested in investigating. From starting off saying it was a shooting, and then it was shot in the head, then he was beat up, and then it was a hit and run. She's always been suspicious, obviously. So she set up a GoFundMe page. And she now has over $40,000, and so she has enough to have the body exhumed privately. It may be, in the light of all this that's going on, maybe she won't have to pay for it, hey? We'll see. So she has set up this, she suspects the Murdaugh involvement, and she always has. Her son was openly gay. Now, we're looking at, what year was it, 2015? You know, was it not accepted by the Murdoch boys? Was one of them maybe involved in some sort of relationship with them? I would imagine that family, the Murdochs, those boys, if they were homosexual, bisexual or whatever, it probably wouldn't have been something that would have been acceptable, because they were probably supposed to be really macho, like, you know, all those 3 generations of their family. I don't know, what do you think? Anyway, you can see, I mean, poor Stephen's mother, you know, it must have been terrible to not know really what happened to your son, because she couldn't understand why it was a hit and run. His car was parked sort of miles away, and she said he wasn't stupid, he would not have walked along the highway in the middle of the night. He would have cut through the woods, or, you know, kept well off the road, etc. So how had it happened? Also, there was no glass found around, you know, from a car or bits from a car. So it was just his body lying there. And I think privately, just in the local rumour mill, if you like, which I know is only a rumour mill, so the 2 boys had long been suspected in the involvement in the death of this poor boy, Stephen. Sandy claims, that's Stephen's mother, that Alex Murdoch phoned her after the incident and offered to be her legal counsel, and she was surprised, and she thought, why do I need legal counsel? And he also turned up at the accident scene. Well, why did he turn up at the accident scene? Strange. Probably talked to the police, make sure the story was suppressed instantly. You know, maybe those boys, if they were involved, told him about it and said, we need help, etc. Who knows? So, no broken glass or car parts near the body. Stephen's clothes were intact. His shoes were on, which apparently is something I learned during research in this case. Someone who is hit by a car normally is lifted out of their shoes, because the force of a car hitting you, you know, you can imagine. So they're normally out of their shoes. Stephen was in his shoes. And also, he had a clear head trauma injury that looked like it was done by something other than a car. Now, that's probably why in the first instance the police thought he'd been shot in the head, eh? So how does being shot in the head then suddenly look like you've been beat up, and then suddenly look like you've been run over? I don't know. So, very strange, isn't it? So, just as you might think, there's a lot of bizarre twists in this story. So we've got a young boy found at the side of the road, declared a victim of a hit and run, but was he though? Then you've got the housekeeper for many years, has a trip and fall accident at the Murdoch's home. But did she though, trip and fall? Then you have poor Mallory, who this was an accident. I think we're satisfied this is an accident, but it's reckless manslaughter, really, isn't it? If Paul knew that he was drunk and he knew he was driving recklessly, he didn't care, did he? So poor Mallory, you know, she lost her life, her parents lost their daughter, because he just felt like he was like the big I am and he could do whatever he wanted. Then, of course, you have to feel sorry for him then, because then he gets shot at the same time as his mother. So all this has happened. Now you might think that's enough to happen in one family, because I don't know about you, my family's like a bit, you know, all families are a bit, you know, we've got our positives and negatives, but nothing like that has ever happened in my family, touch wood. But no, that wasn't the end of it all, because then on September the 4th, 2021, Alex Murdoch was shot in the head in a drive-by shooting when I think his car tyre, supposedly he stopped to change a tyre, but the wound was superficial and he survived. Now, when I heard about this at the time, I thought, because I think just then the case had come to my attention, and we were all thinking, what the hell is going to happen in this case? First thing I thought was, oh, he's done that to himself, because he's trying to make it look like somebody was trying to kill the whole family, so it made it look like whoever killed Maggie and Paul tried to kill him as well. Oh, but no, it wasn't even as straightforward as that, because it turns out that he actually paid his cousin, Curtis Smith, and we'll have a little look at... he actually paid his cousin, Curtis Smith, to do it, because he was trying to commit suicide. Okay, so apparently the day before he'd been sacked for stealing from his law firm, and he had done this, he had asked his cousin to do this so his surviving son, Buster, could collect life insurance, and he thought it would make Buster's life easier if he was not there and Buster had some money. There you go. So what do you think? So we've got 2 suspicious deaths, we've got 2 murders, we've got an accidental death, and now we've got a faked drive-by shooting, all in one family. Okay, well, finally, Alex was arrested for murder. And on the 2nd of March this year, 2023, not very long ago, he was found guilty for the murder of Maggie and Paul, and he was sentenced to 2 life terms. So it turns out he had an opioid addiction. Maybe this is what drove him to all this madness, I don't know. And the other thing I thought was interesting, and I just want to comment on, is really the reason he was convicted, because there was no evidence apart from this. It was just he's saying he didn't do it, and nobody could prove he did do it. But Paul had taken, while he was there at the hunting lodge, in the dog kennels, he'd taken a Snapchat video that he posted, live or instantly on Snapchat, of him with the dogs, and in the background you could hear Alex Murdaugh calling his dog, Bubba, calling for him to come to him. Now, Alex Murdaugh had said he wasn't there that day, but this was evidence of our own ears that we could hear him calling his dog, so he was there, and he did murder Maggie and Paul. Now, again, poor Maggie, well, poor Paul. I mean, imagine your husband, you turn around, your husband's just about to shoot you, or or your father. I mean, it's just worse than anything, isn't it? But he was found guilty, and he was given these 2 life sentences. Hallelujah. So, what's my take on it? Well, I think there's more to come out. I don't think Stephen was a victim of a hit and run accident. I think the boys, someone had something to do with that, and I think it was around his sexuality, and that would either be they just hated him because he was gay, or maybe they'd had some sort of encounter with him, and they didn't want him to tell anyone because it would ruin their image. Either way, I think it was a homophobic attack of one way or another, and I think they were definitely involved. But I don't know, we'll see what happens with the exhumation. And yeah, as far as Alex is concerned, maybe the opioid addiction made him do whatever he did. Maybe just felt, sometimes people just mentally fall apart, don't they? And it doesn't matter how much money you have, some people will always want more, and especially if you've got two spoiled boys to sort of cater to, you're trying to dig them out of trouble all the time, you'd be throwing money about left, right and centre. I think it's a narcissist family, as far as the men are concerned anyway. I think there's this entitlement that's probably gone back generations. I think you see this quite often, don't you? You get a family, you get a person who comes from nothing and makes a success, which was probably like the great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather of Alex Murdaugh. And then as each generation that comes along, because then the children are not so, they've never had want, they've never experienced want. By the time it came to Paul and Buster, you know, they'd always been rich. They'd always been rich and famous and, you know, could do whatever they wanted. So they didn't know what it was like to struggle to. So they're in this sense of entitlement. In the end, it just must make you fit. I mean, how often do we see it? There's a lot of famous people, rich people, business people. Their children, they don't cope well, do they? You know, you'd think they'd have everything they wanted, you know. But maybe having everything you want is not a good thing, really, because it seems like there's a lot of suicides of children of famous people. There's a lot of them die, you know, through accidents, like because they're doing like reckless things, etc. So, you know, of course, we all aspire to have more money. We all, you know, lots of people would like to be famous, but it always seems to be a price to pay for it, doesn't there? But I suppose there's a price for everything, really. Yeah, I think each generation gets lazier and more spoiled, and they don't think that they have to work for a living. I think what happened with Paul, you know, looking at the reasons why Alex might have killed, why Alex did kill Paul and Maggie, I think Paul, he was probably, I think he was fed up with him because he was costing him money and he was, there were too many problems, you know. I really do think, or maybe he just happened to be there when Alex had this notion that he could just kill Maggie. I'd like to think that he didn't plan it. Maybe they were just all there one day and he just suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I could kill them now and pretend somebody else did it. Maybe it was a spontaneous, spur of the moment thing, maybe not a planned thing. Maybe it was triggered by his opioid addiction. Maybe he got into an argument with Maggie because she found out about his affair, or I think she probably already knew about it, but maybe she just brought it up. You know, we don't know because we weren't there, but luckily we had that Snapchat video, which meant that Alex could be proved to be there at the time, and he had lied to the police when he said he'd arrived there and found the bodies. So, what do you think? Now, he's sometimes, I think he was saying that maybe Curtis had done it, this cousin that is paid to kill him, who botched it. I mean, you know, you really couldn't make it up. So he had one job, you know, he had to, according to Alex, you know, he asked him to shoot him in the head so that his son could have the insurance policy, and Curtis couldn't even manage that. So, yeah. So I don't know if he would have been able to go along there and shoot two people just in cold blood like that. I think Alex did it, definitely did it, and he did it just because they were inconvenient and for the money, and that is horrible, isn't it? Especially horrible. And as I say, poor Maggie, she gave the best years of her life to that man that was her husband. She stuck by him and was rewarded by being shot. So there you go. So not a very nice man, but we'll see what happens in the future with the exhumation of Gloria and Stephen, and maybe there'll be more charges to answer by the Murdoch family. Well, of course Paul's not here anymore, but Buster is still here. Now, what do you think about Buster? Do you think, yeah, it sort of seems strange to me that he was outside everything, you know, that all this was going on, and yet why did Alex shoot Paul and kill Paul, but then he was so concerned about Buster having some money that he arranged for his cousin to shoot him so that Buster could pick up on the insurance policy? Was Buster like the favourite son? You know, it's strange, isn't it? Why would you do that? You shoot one son, but the other one, you're willing to get shot. Why didn't he get Curtis to kill him earlier so that Maggie, Paul and Buster all had some money from his insurance policies? What did he have against Paul? I think he just found Paul problematic. That's what I think. I think Paul was off the rails and he thought he was going to cause him more problems, or maybe he thought Paul was closer to his mum. I don't know, but all seems odd, doesn't it? And I hope that Gloria's family gets some answers, and I hope that Stephen's mother gets some answers too. Okay, so I hope you found this video interesting. If you have, as I say, please press the thumbs up, the like. If you're not subscribed yet to this channel, please consider subscribing. That really helps me out. As I say, and let me know, would you like me to do this analysis of the body language and the things that Paul and Emma have said in the Nicola Bulley case, or just another video of more literally just using my intuition? I have no, you know, you can't prove that somebody is lying or whatever, you know, I can only say what I think, and there's been quite a few things not only said, but just things that have happened in this investigation, or lack of investigation, just strike me as so strange, things that I've never seen before. And I have a keen interest in true crime. I watch a lot of true crime, and this isn't even really supposed to be a crime, but it's the most mysterious case, isn't it? I think that's why everyone's so interested in it. But okay, so remember always to live and love carefully and wisely, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Thank you.